In this video, I'm going to talk about the goddess Macha. Macha is mentioned in a long list of Irish texts, way too many to talk about them all in a short video. Most of these are available to read online for free, so I've made a sheet where I've listed the texts and the links where you can find them, and you can download it for free. Just look in the show notes under the video. So you'll find that most of the stories about Macha have several different versions, and they don't always completely agree. This is one of the challenges or joys of studying Macha, depending on how you look at it. I also want to talk a little bit about my own relationship with Macha, and I'll finish up with a devotional reading. So you might have heard about the Book of Invasions, an Irish text which tells how different races tried to settle in Ireland and what became of them. After the first settlers were all drowned, a second group, led by Partholone, were next, and among a list of Partholone's daughters is one called Macha. But that's all we have of her, a name on a list. Partholone's people don't survive, though. Then Nevid comes with his people, and Nevid's wife, or queen, is called Macha. Now, Nevid clears 12 plains for agriculture, the final one being the plain of Armagh, or Ard Macha, which means Macha's height. Macha is described as a prophet who foresees something which is going to happen much later in Ireland, which is the great slaughter and destruction wrought by the Táin Bó Cúailnge, the cattle raid of Cooley. She has this prophetic vision after Nevid has cleared the plain of Armagh. This vision of destruction causes Macha, wife of Nevid, to die of a broken heart. She's buried at Ardvacha, and a fair is instituted in her name. This story is reminiscent of the story of Taltu, the foster mother of Lu, who herself clears away a wood, turning it into an agricultural plain. Her heart bursts due to the physical effort of this, and the Lunas affair at what is now Telltown is instituted in her memory. But Nevid's people are forced to leave Ireland, and next come the Firbolg, then the Tuatha De Danann, who represent the pre-Christian gods of Ireland. And Macha's back. Now she's said to be the daughter of Ernvas, who's described as a female farmer. And this is the Macha who's associated with the Morrigan. So let's have a look at this relationship. So Macha is said to be one of 3 or sometimes 4 sisters who are usually associated with the Morrigan in her triple form. Their mother, Ernvas, is always called a farmer, and she's also the mother of the 3 great sovereignty goddesses, Eru, Fola, and Banva. This Macha doesn't have much in the way of stories. She's just identified. And in a related text called the Ca Moituira, or a Second Battle of Moitira, she's said to be killed, implying that she's a warrior. But sometimes when members of the Tuatha De Danann are said to be killed, they seem to pop up again later, with no explanation. After all, they're gods. We next hear of someone called Macha in a story about 3 Ulster kings. This is set somewhere between 300 and 600 BC. These 3 kings have made a solemn agreement to take 7-year turns at being king. This goes okay for a couple of rotations, but then one of the kings, Aedhruach, falls to his death at a waterfall, and he has a daughter called Macha Mongruach, Macha of the red hair. She tries to claim her father's portion of the kingship, but the other 2 kings won't hear of it because she's a woman. So Macha raises an army and goes to war with them. She kills one king, but his 3 sons escape. Then she marries the other king, kind of taming him, I suppose. Then she captures and enslaves the 3 sons of the king she killed and makes them dig the ramparts of Auanvacha, the great ceremonial center of Ulster, giving it its name. This is a really good story. I haven't done it justice, but I tell it in another video. If you enjoy my videos, you might like to join one of my online classes. I'm taking a break from teaching in July and August, but I'll soon be back with more classes. Some classes have tiered pay-what-you-can pricing, and there are often scholarships available for the more expensive classes. To hear about these when they're announced, you can go to my website and subscribe to my newsletter, or follow me on my Patreon page. The final Macha is one you're probably most familiar with. This is the Macha who's associated with horses in the Ulster cycle, And while Macha Mangrug feels human and is said to be a historical person, this final Macha feels more supernatural. Her story, sometimes called the debility of the Ulsterman, is an important foretale to the main Tan Bo Culnia, or cattle raid of Cooley, because she places a curse on the men of Ulster, rendering them useless in battle. This in turn creates a space in the story for the hero Cuchulainn to single-handedly defend Ulster. And this is another story I'm just going to summarize, but I'll share the texts in the notes if you'd like to read them. What happens is this Macha just shows up at the house of a wealthy cattle lord and widower who's called Crinku or Crinnic. Macha just walks into his house one day, and without a word, she begins acting as his wife. He just goes along with this. He can't believe his luck, I'm sure. He gets her with child. Then the time comes for the fair at Auenwache. Remember the fair, the one in honor of Macha, wife of Nevid. So Crinku is obliged to go to this fair, but Macha refuses to go with him because she's quite close to giving birth. She tries to convince him to stay home. He says he has to go. So then she says, "Then don't mention me. If you do, it will be all over with us." Of course, he does mention her, and in the worst possible way. There's horse racing at the fair, and the king's horses win the race. And Crinku shouts out, "My wife could outrun those horses." So the king sends for Macha, who's now in labor, and she's forced to race against the king's horses. She begs the king and the crowd of men who are gathered to let her give birth in private, give her some dignity, but they refuse, thus humiliating her. She outruns the horses, falls down, gives birth to twins, stands up, and curses the warriors of Ulster, finally identifying herself as Macha. And at this point, she dies or disappears from the fair and from Irish mythology, sort of. That was quite a ride, so let's just recap. Macha, daughter of Partholón, is just a daughter on a list of daughters. Macha, wife of Nevid, is a prophet who dies of a broken heart when she foresees the story I've just been telling you. Macha of the Tuatha Dé Danann is the one associated with the Morrigan. Macha Mangrug is the great female king and warrior. And then there's Macha, who curses the men of Ulster. When we get into the story of Cuchulainn, some spooky stuff happens. In one version of his birth, as his mother gives birth to him, a mare comes and stands in the doorway of the house and gives birth to twin foals. These foals are taken to Auenwache, the capital of Ulster, along with the infant Cuchulainn, but then they're never mentioned again, sort of. When Cuchulainn is still a youth, he sees a grey horse emerge from a loch, that is a body of water. He jumps on its back and rides it until it's tame. And this horse is always referred to as the Grey of Macha. He also sees a black horse emerge from another loch called Sanglan and does the same. This horse is known as the Black of Sanglan. Are these horses the two foals that were born at the same time as him? We don't know. Are they somehow mysteriously the twins Macha bore after her horse race, transformed into horses? We don't know that either. These two horses become Cuchulainn's chariot team and play important roles in the story of his death. Wounded and cut free from the chariot, they try to return to their respective bodies of water, but the Grey comes back to defend the dying Cuchulainn, killing many of his enemies in the process. I know this is a lot of information. Like, opinions vary as to whether these Machas are facets of a single goddess. There's no way to be sure. I see them as one, but I'm attracted to some aspects more than others. I was first drawn very tentatively to Macha because I already had a devotional relationship with Epona and with Rhiannon. I was aware of Macha's horse associations and curious, but I never felt attracted at all to the Morrigan. That's not a value judgment. I'm just being honest. Some of this stems from the way a lot of the Morrigan's followers portray her, much more than how the mythology portrays her. But leaving that to one side, it made me a little wary of Macha. However, when I started to study the myths I've been telling you about, I kind of felt like Macha was looking over my shoulder, sort of asking me to get involved. as though she put her foot in the door so that I couldn't easily shut her out, but not in a bad way. For a while, I thought this might be a more significant or more important relationship than it's turned out to be. I think that's probably on me, and who knows what the future holds. One thing I've found is that because I do what I do, teaching and making videos and writing, then deities seem to reach out to me because they want me to talk about them. I know a few other pagan writers and teachers who say they have similar experiences. If that sounds at all conceited, I assure you it's actually very humbling, and that doing the required study is hard work, but very rewarding. If I can make it easier for the next person to get the information they need, that's great. So, other than being Macha's keyboard warrior from time to time, my relationship with her is a little bit abstract. I used to be very involved with horses, and I'm still very concerned with horse welfare and the ethics around our relationships with horses. When Macha is treated like a horse, made to race, has her dignity temporarily erased, I see a lot of metaphors there for how we treat not only horses, but the land and the animals we exploit for agriculture. And I don't think that it's surprising that Mach is also associated with clearing the land for agriculture, with the death of queens or goddesses associated with that, and with the Lunas affair at Armagh. Her name is even related to words for fertile plains and agricultural enclosures. I've talked quite a bit about this kind of thing in other videos, so I won't labor the point. But this is a huge ethical conundrum. As humans with a large and burdensome population, we can only sustain our numbers by exploiting the earth, by growing fields of grain, and traditionally also exploiting domestic animals. So, as far as I'm concerned, the true issue of sovereignty is right relationship with the land, not personal sovereignty. I don't think humanity has been in right relationship with the land for a very long time. But it's not a question of casting blame. However, I do think that a lot of sovereignty tales are the result of our ancestors wrestling with this problem in the only way they could, by making stories. And Macha, who's real to me, also lends herself to act as a metaphor for the things we exploit. I'm going to finish up with a devotional reading about our Macha. If you'd like to pause the video to get comfortable and use this as a kind of meditation, you can do that now. This is slightly adapted from the 14th century text in the Metrical Dinhenicus, which was translated by Edward Gwynne in the early 1900s. You'll hear a brief mention of Macha, wife of Nevid, and a little about Macha Mongrug before it goes on to talk about Macha's curse on the Ulstermen. In the plain where our horsemen ride, there was buried in fair seclusion a lovely woman, Macha, wife of Nevid. Twice 6 plains did Nevid clear before his home to win renown. Of these was this plain, to my joy, across which I shall wend my steady way. Macha, who diffused all excellences, the noble daughter of red-weaponed Aithe, the raven of the raids, was buried here. She it was that shaped with her brooch Awen above the sloping plain. To bewail her was held by Ullid's host in full numbers yonder, to all time the assembly of Macha on the wide plain. It is right that I should now tell the tale, whereof it came that the Ullid lay in pangs of general sickness, a spell past cure. There came one day in bright glory to Conover's appointed assembly from the waters eastward, a man rich in herds, Cryn, son of Agnaman, lord of hundreds. Then they bring, pacing proudly, 2 horses, whose like I see not, to the warriors' horse race held at that season. Though their like was not found, Cryn said that his wife was swifter, though heavy with child. Arrest ye the chieftain, said Conover, leader in battle, till the warrior's wife come to a noble race against my steeds. A messenger was sent to fetch her by the king of the stout levelled spears, to bid her come from the ocean waves, to contend on behalf of the idle-speaking Cryn. The woman came without delay to the assembly of perilous exploits. Her 2 names, not seldom heard in the West, were bright Grian and pure Macha. In her roofless dwelling in the west, she was Grian, the son of womankind. When she arrived, fierce for glory, she prayed at once for respite to the host of undefeated clans, because her hour of travail was come. The Ullid made answer thereupon that she could find no grace before the contest from the sordid battalion. Then the nimble bright lady bared herself and loosened the hair about her head. Without fierce cry to urge her, she came to the race. The horses were brought close beside her to drive them past the noble lady. Swift though the prince's steeds were among the tribes, swifter was the woman. Unsparing of effort, the king's horses were over slow. When she reached the end of the green, noble was her stake, great and famous. She bore twin babes without respite before the folk of the Red Branch fort. Through her glorious deeds, sorrow was their nurse. She leaves a word enduringly upon the pillars of the Red Branch, that in times of war they should be in distress, in anguish and labor pangs. The word she uttered then brought distress to the lordly host. It clave to them till the 9th of 9 lives. Her imprecation brought their ruin. Then the woman died of that sore sickness and was buried yonder in solitude in Macha, rich in mead. From the life whose virtues were not left unsung over the spot, her name clave to this plain.